Nia Jackson stood in the wreckage of a trashed Miami hotel room, her first-class boarding pass shredded on the floor, a cryptic note pinned to the wall reading, "You'll pay for this, Auditor." Hours earlier, she'd been denied her seat on a flight from Dallas, a petty slight that spiraled into a racist conspiracy threatening her life. What started as a routine audit had unleashed a vengeful storm she'd battled for years. Her enemy knew her secret, and they weren't finished. How far would they go? Before we dive in, tell us where you're watching from, and if you stand for justice against corruption, hit like and subscribe for more explosive stories like Nia's. Nia Jackson stepped into the buzzing chaos of Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport's Terminal C, her sleek gray blazer hugging her frame like a quiet shield. At 35, she carried herself with the kind of understated confidence that came from years of navigating spaces where she wasn't always welcome. Her ticket, clutched in her right hand, read first-class seat 2B on United Airlines Flight 321 to Miami, a detail she'd double-checked that morning. Her mission was simple: blend in, observe, and audit the airline's compliance with federal anti-discrimination laws. She'd done this dozens of times before, slipping through airports like a shadow, her true identity as a senior investigator for the U.S. Department of Transportation tucked away in a hidden pocket of her wallet. Today felt routine, the hum of travelers dragging overstuffed suitcases and the chatter of gate announcements blending into a familiar rhythm. Her dark eyes scanned the crowd, noting a young couple arguing over a lost boarding pass and a businessman barking into his phone about a delayed meeting. Nothing out of the ordinary. Yet. She approached Gate 17, where a line was already forming, passengers jostling for position like it was a race to board. Nia's locks were swept into a tight, professional bun, her outfit crisp and unassuming, chosen to deflect attention rather than draw it. She wasn't here to make a statement with her appearance, only with her work. The gate agent stood behind the counter, a wiry guy in his late 40s with thinning blonde hair and a United badge pinned crookedly to his vest. His name tag glinted under the fluorescent lights. Todd. He tapped at his keyboard with the bored efficiency of someone who'd scanned 1,000 tickets before breakfast, barely glancing up as passengers shuffled forward. Nia waited her turn, her posture relaxed but her mind sharp, cataloging every flicker of behavior around her. This was her job, to watch, to listen, to spot the cracks in the system where prejudice festered. When she reached the front, she handed over her boarding pass with a polite nod, her voice steady. "Morning." Todd took the ticket, his fingers brushing the edge as he slid it under the scanner. The machine beeped, a green light flashing, but his eyes narrowed as he peered at the screen. He tilted his head, then looked up at her, his lips curling into a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. "This says first class 2B, he said, his tone dripping with skepticism, like he'd caught her in a lie. Nia met his gaze, unflinching. "That's right." He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms, the smirk widening as he studied her from head to toe. "Huh. Must be some kind of glitch. This ticket's invalid." His voice carried just enough volume to turn heads nearby, a subtle invitation for others to join his doubt. Nia's pulse ticked up, but her face remained a mask of calm. She'd seen this before, the way some people assumed she didn't belong in certain spaces, their biases bubbling up in smug little comments like his. "It's not a glitch," she said evenly, pulling her driver's license from her wallet and sliding it across the counter. "Here's my ID. It matches the reservation." Todd snatched the card, holding it up to the light as if it were a counterfeit bill, his bony fingers tapping the edge. Around them, the crowd stirred. A woman in a floral scarf whispered to her husband, her eyes darting to Nia with a mix of curiosity and disdain. A teenage boy snickered, nudging his friend, who muttered something under his breath that sounded like, "No way she's first class." The air thickened with their judgment, a silent chorus of onlookers questioning her right to be there. Todd flipped the ID back onto the counter, not bothering to hide his irritation. "Yeah, well, I still need to check this. Step aside." He waved her out of line like she was a stray dog blocking the path, his tone clipped and final. Nia's jaw tightened, but she complied, moving to the side as he motioned the next passenger forward. A white guy in a pinstripe suit, maybe 50, strode up with the confidence of someone who'd never been questioned. Todd scanned his pass in 3 seconds flat, flashing a grin. "Enjoy first class, sir." The man nodded and sauntered toward the jet bridge, his polished shoes clicking against the tile. Nia watched, her mind racing. This wasn't about a ticket error. It was about her skin, her presence in a space Todd couldn't reconcile with his worldview. She stood there, arms crossed as Todd worked through the line, deliberately ignoring her. Passengers streamed past, some casting sidelong glances, others pretending she wasn't there. A middle-aged woman in a cashmere sweater paused, her lips pursed as she muttered to her companion, "Probably tried to sneak in. You see it all the time." Her friend nodded, their voices low but sharp, slicing through the terminal's din. Nia's fingers twitched, itching to call Todd out, but she held back. She was here to gather evidence, not start a scene. Not yet. After 10 minutes, Todd finally beckoned her back, his smirk replaced by a thin, impatient frown. "All right, looks like it's in the system," he said, handing her a new boarding pass. "But first class is full now. You're in economy 28C. Next time don't cause a holdup." He turned away before she could respond, dismissing her like an afterthought. Nia stared at the new ticket, her chest tightening. Seat 28C, middle row, back of the plane. She'd booked 2B weeks ago, confirmed it twice, and now this. Her eyes flicked to Todd, who was already joking with a coworker, his laugh grating against her ears. The whispers around her grew louder, a man in a cowboy hat chuckling as he said, "Guess she didn't make the cut." His buddy snorted, nodding in agreement. Nia swallowed the urge to snap back, her training kicking in. She was a federal auditor, not a random traveler they could bully. This wasn't a mistake. It was a calculated slight, the first thread in a tapestry of discrimination she was here to unravel. She adjusted her blazer, picked up her carry-on, and headed for the jet bridge, her steps measured but her mind blazing. The tunnel to the plane smelled of jet fuel and stale carpet, a narrow chute echoing with the shuffle of feet. Nia's thoughts churned as she processed what had just happened. Todd's smirk, his flimsy excuse, the way he'd singled her out while letting others glide through. It fit the pattern she'd studied in reports: subtle harassment, preferential treatment skewed by race, gate agents wielding petty power to enforce their biases. She'd expected resistance on this audit, but not this fast, not this blatant. As she stepped onto the aircraft, the flight attendant at the door gave her a tight-lipped smile, her eyes lingering a beat too long before pointing her toward the rear. "Economy's that way," she said, her voice clipped, as if Nia needed the reminder. The first-class cabin gleamed ahead, all plush leather and wide seats, a world she'd been shut out of for no reason but Todd's whim. Nia glanced at the passengers settling in. The businessman from earlier, sipping a pre-flight mimosa, a woman in a silk blouse, adjusting her designer sunglasses, an older guy with a silver beard, already reclining like he owned the place. None of them had been questioned, their privilege a free pass. She moved past, her carry-on rolling behind her, and squeezed into the economy aisle, where the air was thicker, the seats narrower, the mood heavier. Row 28 loomed near the lavatories, a middle seat between a snoring retiree and a teenager blasting music through leaky earbuds. Nia stowed her bag, slid into place, and pulled out her phone, her fingers flying across the screen as she typed a note. "DFW Gate 17, Agent Todd, 9:42 a.m. Denied, confirmed 2B, reassigned 28C, suspected profiling." She hit save, her breath steadying as she leaned back, the plane's engines rumbling to life beneath her. This was just the beginning, a small spark she'd fan into a fire. Todd thought he'd won, that he'd put her in her place. He had no idea who he was dealing with. Nia wasn't here to play victim. She was here to expose a system rotten to its core. As the aircraft taxied, she closed her eyes, not to rest, but to strategize. The real fight was coming, and she'd be ready. Little did she know it was already closer than she thought, coiled like a snake in the cabin around her waiting to strike. Nia Jackson settled into the cramped misery of seat 28C, the economy section of United Airlines Flight 321 humming with the low roar of engines and the restless shuffle of passengers. Her knees pressed against the tray table, the snoring retiree on her left, drooling onto his faded plaid shirt. while the teenager on her right bobbed his head to a tinny beat leaking from his earbuds. She'd tucked her carry-on into the overhead bin, a tight fit among overstuffed backpacks, and a guitar case that looked one jostle away from tumbling out. Her phone rested in her lap, the note about Todd's gate stunt still glowing on the screen, a quiet testament to the fight she'd just begun. The air smelled faintly of recycled sweat and cheap coffee, a stark contrast to the first-class cabin she'd glimpsed up front. But Nia wasn't here for comfort, she was here for truth. She tapped her fingers against her thigh, replaying the incident at Gate 17. Was Todd just a lone jerk, or the tip of a deeper iceberg? She'd find out soon enough. The plane leveled off at 35,000 feet, the seatbelt sign flicking off with a soft ding. Passengers stirred, some fumbling for snacks, others craning their necks to flag down the crew. Nia pulled out her notebook, a slim, leather-bound thing she kept for off-the-grid observations, and began scribbling. Flight 321, 10:15 a.m., economy. Reassignment confirmed. Next step, monitor crew behavior. Her pen moved with the precision of a surgeon, each word a brick in the case she was building. She'd barely finished the sentence when a shadow loomed over her row. A flight attendant, mid-40s with a peroxide blonde bob and a name tag reading Marla, stood in the aisle, her arms crossed like a schoolteacher about to scold a tardy kid. "Ma'am," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "You need to stow that bag under the plane. It's a safety issue." Nia glanced up, her brow furrowing. Her carry-on was regulation size, snugly stowed overhead, same as everyone else's. She scanned the bins. A red duffel hung half-open 3 rows up, a roller bag teetered on the edge across the aisle, yet Marla's eyes were locked on her. "There's plenty of space," Nia replied, keeping her tone even, professional. "It's secure where it is." Marla's lips tightened into a thin line, her blue eyes narrowing. "Not good enough. Policy says I decide what's secure. Get it down, or we'll check it plainside." Heads turned, passengers perking up at the hint of drama. The retiree snorted awake, wiping his chin, while the teenager yanked out an earbud, smirking like he'd just scored front-row seats to a show. Nia's pulse quickened, but she kept her cool. This wasn't about policy. It was a power play. Another jab at her presence. She leaned forward, voice low but firm. "I know the rules. Carry on, stay unless there's no room, and there is. Why single me out?" Marla flinched, caught off guard by the pushback, but doubled down fast. "You're being disruptive," she snapped, loud enough for the whole section to hear. "Comply, or I'll have you removed when we land." Gasps rippled through the cabin. A woman 2 rows back whispered, "She's trouble," her voice laced with disdain. A guy in a baseball cap muttered, "Typical," the word heavy with unspoken venom. Nia caught the slurs in their tones, the way they rolled off tongues like second nature. Her skin prickled, but she held Marla's gaze. What was this woman's game? Was she in on Todd's stunt, or just another cog in the machine? "Hey, if she's a problem, kick her off now," a burly man in row 30 called out, his voice gruff and uninvited. Marla smirked, emboldened, and reached for the intercom. "I'm calling the captain. You've got 10 seconds to move that bag." Nia's mind raced. She could fight this, cite federal regs chapter and verse, but escalation mid-flight risked blowing her cover. She stood, grabbed her carry-on, and handed it over, her movements deliberate, her face a mask of calm. "Fine," she said, sitting back down. "But this isn't over." Marla snatched the bag, strutting off like she'd won a prize fight while passengers murmured their approval. Nia's chest burned, not from defeat, but from the clarity sinking in. This was coordinated. Todd's gate trick wasn't random, and Marla wasn't acting alone. She reopened her notebook, jotting, 10:35 a.m. Marla, flight attendant. Targeted bag removal, false disruption claim, possible crew collusion. The pen shook slightly in her grip, adrenaline mixing with resolve. She dodged a bigger scene, kept her auditor status under wraps, but the victory felt hollow. As the plane droned on, she overheard Marla up ahead, her voice hushed but audible over the engine hum. "Yeah, she's in check now," she said into a handheld radio, glancing back at Nia with a flicker of triumph. "Tell him it's handled." Tell who? Nia's stomach twisted. Was there a puppet master pulling strings, or was this just Marla? Flexing. She scanned the cabin, noting the passengers' faces, some hostile, some indifferent, all part of the backdrop to her unfolding nightmare. The next hour crawled by, the tension simmering like a pot about to boil over. Nia stayed quiet, her senses on high alert. What if Marla came back with worse? Could she trust anyone on this flight, or was the whole crew in on it? She glanced at the call button above her seat, tempted to test their response time, but held off. No need to poke the bear yet. Instead, she watched Marla patrol the aisle, her demeanor shifting. Kurt with a black family asking for water, all smiles with a white couple requesting extra pillows. The pattern was subtle, but glaring, a microcosm of the reports Nia had poured over back at DOT headquarters. This wasn't just about her. It was about a system rigged to favor some and punish others. Hey, what's your take on this? She'd love to ask you all. Comment with a number 1 if you think Nia's being unfairly targeted here, or a 2 if you reckon she should have fought harder. Ever dealt with someone like Marla who picks and chooses who gets respect? Hit that like button if you're raging at this crew's nonsense, and subscribe to catch how Nia flips this mess around. She's not done yet, trust me. The plane hit a pocket of turbulence, trays rattling, a kid squealing 5 rows up. Nia gripped her armrest, her mind spinning faster than the engines. She'd thought she'd sidestep trouble by giving up the bag. But that radio call gnawed at her. Who was Marla reporting to? Had Todd tipped off the crew, or was someone higher watching her every move? She replayed the gate scene. Todd's smirk, the whispers, the ease with which he'd downgraded her, then Marla's ambush, timed too perfectly to be coincidence. Her audit was supposed to be covert, but the pieces were clicking into place. Someone knew who she was, and they were testing her limits. All right, folks, what do you say? Drop a number 1 in the comments if you're betting this is a setup, or a 3 if you think Nia's just paranoid. Ever had a gut feeling something's off but no proof? Smash that like if you're hooked on this drama, and subscribe so you don't miss the next twist. Nia's keeping her cool, but for how long? She leaned back, the seat creaking under her weight, her eyes tracing the ceiling panels. The flight stretched on, Miami still 2 hours away. She'd survived Marla's stunt, kept her mission intact, but the air felt heavier now, charged with unseen threats. What if the next move wasn't a bag check, but something uglier? Could she outsmart a crew this bold, or was she flying blind into a trap? Her pen hovered over the notebook, ready to document whatever came next. She'd won this round, or so she thought, but the real storm was brewing, and it was closer than the clouds outside her window. So, here's the big one for you. Who's pulling Marla's strings, and what's their endgame with Nia? Could it be Todd, still smirking from Dallas, or someone way higher up the chain? Drop your wildest guess below, because next time, Nia's about to find out, and it's gonna hit hard. The descent into Miami International Airport began with a jolt, the plane dipping through thick clouds as the captain's voice crackled over the intercom. Folks, we're about 30 minutes out from Miami, starting our approach now. Please, return to your seats. Nia Jackson shifted in the tight confines of 28C, her notebook tucked back into her blazer pocket, her mind still buzzing from Marla's mid-flight ambush. The economy cabin smelled of stale pretzels and nervous sweat, the retiree beside her snoring again, oblivious to the turbulence rattling the overhead bins. She'd weathered the bag stunt, kept her cool, and preserved her cover as a federal auditor, but the radio call Marla made lingered like a ghost in her thoughts. Tell him it's handled. Who was him? The question gnawed at her, a loose thread she couldn't yet pull. The seatbelt sign glowed amber, and the crew bustled through their final checks. Nia watched Marla stride past, her blonde bob bouncing, her eyes avoiding row 28 like it was cursed. Good. Let her think she'd won. Nia's fingers brushed the edge of her phone, itching to type more notes, but she held off. Too many eyes, too little space. The plane banked, sunlight slicing through the window, and she caught a glimpse of Miami's sprawling skyline below. Glittering towers, endless highways, a city humming with promise. She'd be on the ground soon, filing her first report, turning Todd and Marla's games into data points for the Department of Transportation. For now, she'd play passenger, not predator. 20 minutes later, the wheels screeched against the tarmac, a smooth landing that drew a smattering of applause from the back. Nia unbuckled, her muscles stiff from 3 hours in the sardine can of economy, and waited as passengers surged into the aisle. She was reaching for her carry-on, still stowed plainside thanks to Marla, when a new figure appeared at the front of the cabin. The captain, a tall man with salt and pepper hair and a crisp navy uniform, stepped out of the cockpit, his expression tight but professional. He scanned the rows, his gaze locking onto Nia with a flicker of recognition. "Ms. Jackson," he called, his voice cutting through the chatter. Heads turned, the teenager beside her pausing mid-yawn to stare. Nia straightened, her pulse ticking up. "Yes, that's me." The captain approached, weaving past a woman wrestling with a stroller, his boots thudding softly against the carpeted floor. "I'm Captain Ellis. Got a minute?" She nodded, stepping into the aisle, her carry-on forgotten for the moment. He lowered his voice, leaning in close enough that she caught the faint scent of his aftershave. "Heard about the mix-up with your seat. That shouldn't have happened. We've got a spot open in first class now, 2B, your original booking. I'd like you to take it for the last stretch if you're willing." His tone was apologetic, almost earnest, a stark shift from Marla's venom. Her instincts flared. Was this a genuine fix, or a trap to quiet her? She studied his face, crow's feet at the corners of his eyes, a jaw set with quiet authority. He didn't seem rattled, just inconvenienced by a glitch he wanted to correct. "All right," she said, keeping her voice neutral. "I'll take it." Ellis nodded, gesturing toward the front. "Grab your things and follow me." She retrieved her bag from the plainside cart a flight attendant wheeled up, then trailed him through the economy throng, past curious stares and muttered comments. "Lucky break," a woman in a denim jacket grumbled, her tone sour. Nia ignored her, focusing on the captain's broad shoulders leading the way. The first-class cabin was a different world. Wide seats upholstered in buttery leather, a faint hum of privilege in the air. Ellis pointed to 2B, a window seat with a folded blanket draped over the armrest. "Here you go. Sorry again for the hassle." He tipped his cap and retreated to the cockpit, leaving her to settle in. Nia sank into the cushion, the tension in her spine easing for the first time since Dallas. The space felt like a small victory, a reclaiming of what Todd had snatched away. She adjusted her blazer, smoothing the fabric, and let her eyes drift over the cabin. 8 other passengers, all absorbed in their own bubbles. A woman sipping wine, a guy flipping through a golf magazine, the businessman from Gate 17 napping with his tie loosened. No one cared she was here now. Maybe this flight would end smoothly after all. She'd barely clipped her seatbelt when the jet bridge door swung open again, a latecomer striding aboard with the confidence of someone who owned the sky. Nia glanced up, and her breath caught. He was mid-50s, tall and lean, with a tailored, charcoal suit that screamed money and a silver watch glinting on kept on his wrist. His hair was jet black, slicked back, his face sharp and angular, with eyes like chips of ice. He carried a leather briefcase, his stride purposeful as he scanned the cabin. His gaze landed on Nia, and those icy eyes narrowed, a shadow of contempt, flickering across his face. She froze, her gut twisting. She didn't know him, but that look wasn't random. It was personal. The man stopped beside her seat, his lips curling into a thin, predatory smile. "Well, well," he said, his voice low and smooth, laced with something dark. "Looks like you slipped through." Before Nia could respond, he leaned down to Marla, who'd materialized behind him, her face pale but eager. "Get me a coffee," he muttered, then added, "and make sure it's quick." Marla nodded, scurrying off, but not before Nia caught the flicker of fear in her eyes. The man straightened, his stare lingering on Nia a beat too long, then moved to a seat 3 rows back, dropping his briefcase with a thud that echoed in the quiet cabin. Nia's heart thudded, her mind racing. Who was this guy? His presence shifted the air, turning her brief relief into a tight knot of unease. She'd barely processed his words when Marla returned, a steaming mug in hand. As she handed it to him, her elbow jerked, and the coffee splashed, a scalding arc that landed square on Nia's lap. Pain seared through her thighs, a hiss escaping, her lips as she jolted upright. "Oh gosh, I'm so sorry," Marla gasped, her tone frantic but hollow, her eyes darting to the man. Nia wiped at the stain with the blanket, her skin stinging, but her focus locked on Marla's trembling hands. "That wasn't an accident." "Clumsy," the man said from his seat, his voice dripping with mock pity. "You all right over there?" He smirked, sipping his remaining coffee like nothing had happened. Nia's jaw clenched, her blazer now splotched with brown, the heat fading into a dull ache. She met his gaze, refusing to flinch. "I'm fine," she said, her words clipped, a challenge beneath them. His smirk widened, but he said nothing more, turning to his briefcase like she was beneath his notice. She sank back, the leather creaking under her weight, her mind spinning. That spill was deliberate, and he'd orchestrated it. Marla's fear, his timing, the way he'd stared at her like she was prey. This wasn't some random jerk. He knew something. Her audit status was supposed to be covert, but those icy eyes told her he saw through the mask. Her fingers dug into the armrests, the plush seat suddenly feeling like a cage. She'd reclaimed 2B, thought she'd turned the tables, but this man, this shadow in a suit, had flipped it all upside down in minutes. The plane taxied toward the gate, the cabin lights dimming as passengers rustled their belongings. Nia's thoughts churned, piecing together the puzzle. Todd's denial, Marla's ambush, and now this guy, all linked by a thread she couldn't yet name. She glanced back, catching his profile, sharp, unyielding, a predator biding his time. He'd sent a message with that coffee, a warning she couldn't ignore. Her victory was a mirage and the real fight was just beginning. As the jet bridge connected with a thud, she unbuckled, her resolve hardening. Whoever he was, he'd underestimated her. That was his first mistake. Nia Jackson stepped off United Airlines Flight 321 into the humid bustle of Miami International Airport, her blazer still damp with coffee stains, her thighs tender from the scalding spill. The jet bridge spat her out into Terminal D, a sprawling maze of glass and tile where travelers darted like ants, hauling luggage and shouting into phones. Her carry-on rolled behind her, the wheels clicking against the floor, a steady rhythm that kept her grounded amid the chaos. The man in the charcoal suit, the one with icy eyes and a smirk that promised trouble, had vanished into the crowd as soon as the plane docked, his briefcase swinging like a weapon. She didn't know his name yet, but his presence clung to her like smoke, a warning she couldn't shake. Marla had scurried off too, avoiding her gaze, leaving Nia to process the coffee stunt alone. It wasn't an accident. It was a move in a game she hadn't fully mapped out. She adjusted her grip on the bag, her mind replaying the flight. Todd's gate snub, Marla's bag ambush, the captain's last-minute olive branch, and that man's calculated strike. 4 hours airborne, and she'd collected enough for a preliminary report. Subtle racism at the gate, overt hostility mid-flight, and a deliberate attack masked as clumsiness. Her role as a federal auditor demanded evidence, not hunches, so she headed straight for the United Airlines customer service desk near gate D12. The line snaked around a row of blue chairs, passengers grumbling about delays and lost bags. Nia joined them, her posture relaxed but her eyes sharp, scanning for any sign of the suit or Marla. Nothing yet, just a tired mom juggling a toddler, a businessman tapping his foot, and a college kid scrolling X on his phone. After 15 minutes, she reached the counter, where a supervisor named Carla waited, her auburn hair pulled into a severe ponytail, her United vest crisp despite the late hour. "How can I assist you?" Carla asked, her voice flat, her fingers poised over a keyboard. Nia slid her boarding pass across the counter, the original 2B ticket, not the economy downgrade. "I was denied this seat at DFW, reassigned to 28C for no reason, then harassed mid-flight by your crew. I want to file a complaint." Carla's eyes flicked to the pass, then to Nia, a faint crease forming between her brows. "That's unusual. Let me pull up the record." She typed, the clack of keys filling the silence, while Nia stood still, her breath steady, but her pulse ticking up. This was her first counterstrike, a chance to turn the day's mess into leverage. Carla frowned at the screen, her lips pursing. "Says here your seat was flagged as a duplicate booking. Gate agent Todd processed it, but there's no note on why you were moved." She looked up, her tone softening. "I'm sorry about that. We'll investigate, and I'll log your complaint against Todd and the flight crew. Can you give me specifics?" Nia nodded, launching into a concise rundown. Todd's smirk and invalid claim, Marla's bag demand and radio call, the coffee spill timed with the suit's arrival. Carla scribbled notes on a pad, her pen scratching fast, her face tightening with each detail. "That's unacceptable," she said when Nia finished. "I'll escalate this to our regional manager. You'll hear back within 48 hours. Nia exhaled, a flicker of relief warming her chest. "Thanks. I appreciate it." Carla handed her a case number on a slip of paper, and Nia tucked it into her wallet, next to her hidden DOT badge. She turned away, the weight of the day lifting slightly. A formal complaint was in motion. A paper trail started. She'd won, this round or so it seemed, and could head to baggage claim, then her hotel, to regroup. The terminal buzzed around her, escalators whirring, a janitor pushing a mop across the gleaming floor. She was halfway to the claim area, weaving through a throng of sunburned tourists when two security guards cut into her path. They were beefy, mid-30s with buzz cuts and badges glinting under the lights. "Nia Jackson?" the taller one barked, his hand resting on a radio clipped to his belt. She stopped, her carry-on thudding to a halt. "Yes?" The shorter guard stepped closer, his voice gruff. "We need you to come with us. Got a report of stolen property." Her stomach dropped, but she kept her face neutral. "Stolen property? What are you talking about?" The tall guard smirked, a mirror of Todd's expression back in Dallas. "Your bag. Someone saw you take it from the cart. Let's go." Nia's grip tightened on the handle. "This is mine. I picked it up plainside after the flight. Check the tag." The short guard snatched it from her, flipping it open without asking, his fingers rummaging through her clothes and notebook. She opened her mouth to protest, but he pulled out a driver's license, holding it up triumphantly. "This yours?" She leaned in and her blood ran cold. The photo was hers, but the name read Tamika Reese, a fake ID she'd never seen before. "That's not mine," she said, her voice steady despite the panic clawing at her throat. "Someone planted it." The tall guard chuckled, a low mocking sound. "Sure they did. Hands behind your back." Before she could argue, he spun her around, snapping cuffs onto her wrists, the metal biting into her skin. Passengers gawked, a woman in a straw hat whispering to her husband, "Told you she looks shady." Nia's cheeks burned, but she kept silent, her mind racing. This was no random stop. The timing, the fake ID, the smugness in their eyes, it all pointed to a setup. As they marched her toward a holding room, she caught a glimpse of a figure by the escalators, the man in the charcoal suit. His icy eyes locked on her, a grin splitting his face. He tipped his head, a silent salute, then vanished into the crowd. The holding room was a concrete box, 10 by 10, with a flickering bulb and a metal table bolted to the floor. The guard shoved her into a chair, the cuffs clanking as she sat. "Stay put," the short one growled, tossing her carry-on onto the table. "We're running this ID." They stepped out, locking the door with a heavy click, leaving her alone with the hum of an overworked AC unit. Nia flexed her wrists, the cuffs chafing, her thoughts spinning. That man, he was behind this. She'd seen him on the plane, felt his threat in the coffee spill, and now he'd turned her complaint into a trap. Her complaint to Carla must have triggered an alert, and he'd pounced, planting the ID to discredit her. She leaned forward, resting her forehead on her cuffed hands, piecing it together. He knew she was an auditor. The Tamika Reese ID was too precise, too tailored to her face. This wasn't petty racism anymore. It was a calculated strike to bury her mission. She could reveal her DOT status, flash the badge hidden in her wallet, but that risked blowing her cover across the whole operation. No. She'd play this out, gather more evidence, let them think they'd won. The door swung open, and the tall guard returned, his smirk wider. ID's flagged as stolen. You're in deep, lady. Nia lifted her head, meeting his gaze. I'm a federal auditor. That's fake, and you know it. He laughed, a harsh bark that echoed off the walls. Federal auditor? You don't look the part. Nice try. He leaned in, his breath sour with gum. We've got you on camera taking that bag. You're not talking your way out. Nia's jaw tightened, but she stayed calm. Call your supervisor. Check my real ID. He shrugged, stepping back. We'll see what the system says. Sit tight. The door slammed shut again and she was alone, the bulb buzzing overhead. Her complaint had backfired, flipped into a criminal accusation she hadn't seen coming. That man, whoever he was, had power here, reach she hadn't anticipated. She sat back, the chair cold against her spine, her mind shifting to strategy. The guards were pawns, but the suit was the kingpin. Victor Grayson, she'd later learn. His name, a senior gate manager with tentacles in every corner of United's Miami hub. He'd watched her from the escalators, grinning like a cat with a mouse, and she'd walked right into his web. Her relief at Carla's promise dissolved into a bitter taste, the case number in her wallet now a mocking footnote. This wasn't just about a seat anymore. It was war, and Victor had drawn first blood. As the minutes ticked by, Nia steeled herself, her resolve hardening. He thought he'd caged her, but she'd claw her way out, and when she did, he'd regret it. Nia Jackson sat in the stark holding room at Miami International Airport, the cuffs finally off after 4 grueling hours of interrogation, her wrists raw and red from the metal's bite. The security guards had released her with a grunt. No charges filed, just a curt system error excuse scribbled on a release form. Her carry-on rested on the table, the fake Tamika Reese ID gone, confiscated as evidence they wouldn't explain. She'd walked out of that concrete box thinking she'd dodged Victor Grayson's trap, her mind already spinning with plans to escalate this to her DOT supervisor. The terminal stretched before her, a neon-lit jungle of hurried travelers and rolling suitcases, the air thick with jet fuel and fast food grease. She adjusted her coffee-stained blazer, her steps quickening toward the exit, freedom tasting sharp and sweet on her tongue. She'd survived his setup, kept her cover intact, and now she'd fight back harder. She hailed a cab outside. The Miami, heat slamming into her like a wall, the sky a bruised purple as dusk settled over the city. The driver, a wiry guy with a thick Haitian accent, nodded as she slid into the back seat. Where to? He asked, his eyes flicking to her in the rear view. Forfer. The Palms Hotel downtown, she said, leaning back against the cracked vinyl, her carry-on clutched tight. The cab lurched into traffic, horns blaring around them, and Nia pulled out her phone, ready to text her partner Jamal about the airport fiasco. But as the screen lit up, a notification pinged. A new post on X, tagged with her name. Her stomach twisted. She tapped it and a video loaded, grainy but unmistakable. Her, cuffed, being marched through the terminal by those guards, the angle skewed to make her look guilty as sin. The caption read, "First-class fraud caught red-handed at MIA, another scammer busted." Her breath caught, her thumb hovering over the play button. She hit it, and the footage rolled. 30 seconds of her struggling against the guards, her voice clipped as she demanded answers, edited to sound shrill and desperate. Comments flooded in below. Knew she didn't belong up front? Typical entitlement? Lock her up. The slurs hit harder, raw and unfiltered, each one a knife twist. She scrolled, her chest tightening as the view count ticked past. 10,000, then 20, the retweets spiraling out of control. This wasn't random. It was orchestrated, a public execution of her reputation. And she knew who'd lit the match. Victor Grayson, the man with the icy eyes, grinning from the escalators. The cab rolled to a stop outside the Palms, a sleek tower of glass and steel glowing against the night. Nia paid the driver, her hands trembling slightly, and stepped onto the sidewalk, the video still looping in her mind. She'd thought she'd escaped Victor's trap, but this was his real blow, a viral smear turning her into a pariah. She strode into the lobby, the cool blast of AC a fleeting relief, and approached the check-in desk. The clerk, a young woman, with a tight blonde bun and a name tag reading Lindsay, smiled thinly as Nia handed over her ID. "Reservation for Jackson," she said, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. Lindsay typed, then froze, her eyes flicking from the screen to Nia's face, recognition dawning. I'm sorry, ma'am," Lindsay stammered, her fingers stalling on the keyboard. "There's an issue with your booking. We can't honor it." Nia's jaw tightened. "What issue?" Lindsay swallowed, her cheeks flushing. "It's flagged. Says you're a security risk. I saw that video online, the one where you got arrested. We can't have trouble here." Nia's blood ran hot, her fists clenching at her sides. "That video's a lie. I wasn't arrested, and I've got a confirmed reservation. Check again." Lindsay shook her head, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Policy. I can't. You'll have to leave." A couple checking in nearby turned, their stares heavy with judgment, the man muttering, "Should have known she'd try this here too." Nia stepped back, the lobby spinning around her. Marble floors, chandeliers, the soft clink of a piano in the bar, all mocking her sudden exile. She grabbed her carry-on and walked out, the humid night swallowing her again. Crowds milled on this street, some pointing as she passed, their phones out, snapping pics. "That's her!" a guy in a tank top shouted, his voice slurred with beer. "The fraud chick!" Laughter erupted, a woman yelling, "Go back where you came from!" Its slurs flew fast, ugly words Nia had heard before but never like this. Amplified by a mob fed on Victor's poison, she kept moving, her head high, but her heart pounded, each step a battle against the wave of hate crashing over her. She found a bench 2 blocks away, collapsing onto it, her carry-on thudding beside her. The video had turned her into a target, her face plastered across X, her name a hashtag for bigots to rally around. She opened her phone again, the post now at 50,000 views, the comments a cesspool of venom. "How's it feel to get caught?" one read. "Black privilege. Strikes again," another sneered. She scrolled, spotting a grainy still of Victor in the background, his grin faint but unmistakable, a puppet master reveling in the chaos. He'd taken her airport win, her complaint to Carla, and flipped it into this. A public shaming so brutal, it'd follow her for years. Nia's breath hitched, her fingers gripping the phone tight enough to crack the case. She'd thought freedom from that holding room was a victory, a chance to regroup. But Victor had outplayed her, weaponizing the internet to strip her dignity bare. She'd faced racism before, subtle jabs and cold shoulders. But this was a sledgehammer, smashing her resolve into splinters. She wiped her eyes, refusing to let tears fall, and stood, her shadow stretching long under the streetlights. She'd find another hotel, rebuild her plan, but the sting of this wouldn't fade. Victor had turned her identity against her, and the world had cheered him on. Hey, what's your gut telling you about this? If you think Victor's a coward for hiding behind a viral hit, comment number 1 below. Think Nia should have seen this coming after the airport trap? Drop a 2. Ever had someone twist your story to make you the villain? Hit that like button if this mess has you fired up, and subscribe to see Nia claw her way back from this nightmare. The city pulsed around her, cars honking, neon signs flickering, a relentless beat she couldn't escape. She flagged another cab, her voice hoarse as she gave a new address, a budget motel on the edge of downtown. The driver didn't blink, just nodded and pulled away, leaving the jeering crowd behind. Nia leaned her head against the window, the glass cool against her temple, her mind racing. Victor wasn't done. This was just his opening salvo. She'd survived the cuffs, the guards, but this public gut punch was worse, a wound that'd fester. She'd fight, she always did, but the cost was climbing, and the war was far from over. All right, let's hear it from you. Comment number 1 if you're betting Nia's got the grit to turn this around, or a 3 if you think Victor's got her cornered. Ever seen someone fight back after a smear like this? Smash that, like if you're rooting for her, and subscribe to catch the next blow in this brutal showdown. She closed her eyes, the cab's engine a low rumble beneath her thoughts. Victor had the upper hand now, his grin burned into her memory, a promise of more to come. She'd underestimated him, thought he'd stop at the airport, but this was personal, a vendetta she hadn't seen brewing. Her relief at walking free had been a mirage, and now she was exposed, vulnerable in a way her training hadn't prepared her for. The motel loomed ahead, a squat brick building with a flickering sign, her temporary refuge. She'd regroup, strike back, but one question gnawed at her. How deep did Victor's reach go, and what would he hit her with next? So here's the hook for you. What's Victor cooking up now that he's got Nia on the ropes? Is he just flexing? Or does he know more about her mission than she realizes? Stick around, because the next twist is going to flip this whole game upside down. Nia Jackson slumped against the thin mattress of her room at the Sunrise Motel, a dingy spot on the outskirts of Miami, where the neon sign buzzed like a trapped fly, and the walls smelled of mildew. Her coffee-stained blazer hung over a wobbly chair, her carry-on propped against the door, a flimsy barricade against the chaos chasing her. The viral video Victor Grayson had unleashed still burned in her mind, its 50,000 views now ballooning past 100,000. Each comment, a fresh wound. She'd escaped the airport's holding room, dodged charges, but the public shaming had stripped her bare, turning her into a target for strangers' hate. Now, in this dim refuge, she needed an ally, someone to pull her back from the edge. She grabbed her phone, the screen's glow harsh against the peeling wallpaper, and dialed Jamal Carter, her partner at the Department of Transportation. Jamal picked up on the second ring, his voice a familiar anchor in the storm. "Nia, you okay? Heard you landed in Miami." She exhaled, the tension in her chest loosening a fraction. "Barely. It's a mess, Jamal. Gate agent denied my seat. Crew harassed me mid-flight, then security framed me with a fake ID. Now there's a video online painting me as a fraud. I need you to escalate this to HQ, fast." He paused, the silence stretching too long, his breath uneven on the line. "Damn, that's heavy. Send me what you've got, and I'll push it up the chain tonight." She nodded, even though he couldn't see her, and tapped out a quick email. Flight details, Todd's name, Marla's stunt, the coffee spill, the airport trap, and a link to the X-post. "Done," she said, hitting send. "Thanks, man, I'm counting on you." "Always," he replied, his tone warm but shaky, a note she didn't catch in her exhaustion. "Get some rest, Nia. We'll sort this." The call ended, and she tossed the phone onto the bed, her body sinking deeper into the lumpy mattress. Jamal had her back. He always did. They'd worked a dozen audits together, cracking cases from Seattle to Atlanta, his calm balancing her fire. With him running, point she could breathe, regroup, maybe even sleep. She kicked off her shoes, the carpet rough against her socks, and closed her eyes, the hum of the AC lulling her into a fragile peace. She'd survived Victor's latest hit, found a lifeline in Jamal, and for the first time since Dallas, she felt a flicker of safety. 3 hours later, a crash jolted her awake, the door splintering inward as masked figures stormed the room. Nia bolted upright, her heart slamming against her ribs, the dim glow of a streetlight spilling through the shattered frame. Two men, clad in black hoodies and ski masks, moved fast, one lunging for her carry-on, the other swinging a crowbar that smashed the bedside lamp into shards. "Where's the laptop?" the first growled, his voice muffled but menacing, as he ripped open her bag, clothes flying across the floor. Nia scrambled off the bed, her bare feet crunching glass, her mind racing. "Who sent you?" she demanded, dodging the second thug's grab, her training kicking in. He swung the crowbar, narrowly missing her head, the air whistling past her ear. She ducked, grabbing a chair and hurling it at his legs, toppling him with a grunt. The first guy yanked her laptop from the bag, its sleek silver case glinting as he stuffed it into a backpack. "Got it," he barked, tossing a folded note onto the bed before they bolted out the door, footsteps pounding down the motel stairs. Nia stumbled after them, her breath ragged, but they vanished into the night, a black SUV peeling out of the lot with a screech of tires. She turned back, glass biting her soles, and snatched the note, unfolding it with trembling hands. Scrawled in block letters, "Back off or worse." Her stomach lurched, the words a venomous echo of Victor's grin. But how had he found her here? She sank onto the bed, the springs creaking under her weight, blood trickling from a cut on her foot. The laptop held everything: her audit files, passenger testimonies, months of data on United's dirty tricks. Now it was gone, stolen in a raid too precise to be random. She replayed Jamal's call, his shaky pause, the way he'd pressed for details. Her phone buzzed and she grabbed it, Jamal's name flashing on the screen. She answered, her voice ice. "They hit my room, took my laptop." "What the hell happened?" he stammered, his words tumbling out too fast. "Nia, I messed up. They got to me, offered 50 grand to leak your location. I didn't think they'd—" "You sold me out?" she cut in, her voice a blade, slicing through his excuses. "You gave them my hotel?" Jamal's breath hitched, a sob breaking through. "I'm sorry, Nia. They threatened my kid, said they'd hurt her if I didn't. I didn't know they'd trash your place." She hung up, the phone clattering to the floor, her chest heaving with betrayal. Jamal, her rock, her partner, had cracked under Victor's pressure, handing her over like a lamb to slaughter. The motel's safety, her trust in him, it all shattered in that moment, leaving her exposed, vulnerable, and alone. She stood, ignoring the sting in her foot, and paced the wrecked room, glass crunching under her socks. Victor had her itinerary, her files, her lifeline, all because Jamal folded. She'd thought she could lean on him, rebuild her case, but he'd fed her to the wolves. The note lay crumpled on the bed, a taunt she couldn't unsee. Back off, or worse. Worse than a break-in? Worse than losing her evidence? Her mind spun, piecing it together. Victor knew her every move, her audit's scope, her identity. He'd turned Jamal, a man she'd trusted with her life, into his weapon, stripping her of more than just data. This was personal, a vendetta carved into her reality with every shattered piece of this room. Nia grabbed her carry-on, shoving what little remained inside. A spare shirt, her notebook, a charger with a frayed cord. The laptop was gone, but she had backups, cloud files Jamal didn't know about. She'd rebuild, but the sting of his betrayal cut deeper than the glass in her foot. She'd walked out of the airport thinking she'd outlasted Victor's trap, found a haven here, but he'd played a longer game, striking at her through the one person she'd never suspected. The motel clerk peeked in, his eyes wide at the wreckage, but she waved him off, her voice hoarse. "Call the cops. I'm leaving." She stepped into the humid night, the buzz of Miami's streets a distant roar, her shadow stretching thin, under the flickering sign. She flagged a new cab, her body aching, her mind a battlefield. "Downtown, any hotel," she told the driver, a woman with braids and a bored nod who didn't ask questions. The city blurred past, neon lights smearing into streaks, but Nia barely saw it. Victor's reach was a noose tightening around her, and Jamal's betrayal was the knot. She'd trusted him to escalate her fight, to shield her, but he'd sold her out, leaving her defenseless against a man who'd stop at nothing. Her brief safety had been an illusion, and now she was running again. Her evidence stolen, her ally turned enemy. As the cab rolled on, she clenched her fists, nails digging into her palms. Victor thought he'd broken her, but he'd only lit a fire. She'd come for him, and this time she'd be ready. Nia Jackson checked into the Coral Inn, a nondescript hotel in downtown Miami. Its faded pink facade a far cry from the glossy towers she'd been barred from. The room was small, the bed sagging under a threadbare quilt, the air thick with the scent of bleach and old cigarette smoke. Her carry-on sat by the window, a pitiful pile of salvaged belongings after the motel raid that stole her laptop and shattered her trust in Jamal. She'd showered off the glass dust and blood from her foot, bandaged the cut with a strip of gauze from a corner store, and now stood in a fresh shirt, her coffee-stained blazer discarded like a bad memory. Victor Grayson's note, "Back off or worse," haunted her, but she shoved it down, focusing on her next move. She'd lost her files, her ally, but not her fight. She'd report the break-in, turn this into ammunition against Victor, and rebuild from the ashes. She grabbed her phone, the battery at 20%, and dialed the Miami PD non-emergency line, pacing the worn carpet as it rang. A dispatcher picked up, her voice clipped and tired. Miami police, what's your issue? Nia steadied her breath, her tone firm. I need to report a burglary. My hotel room was trashed 3 hours ago at the Sunrise Motel, 47th Street. 2 men took my laptop, left a threatening note. I've got details if you can send someone. The dispatcher paused, keys clacking in the background. All right, ma'am. Address of the incident? Nia rattled off the motel's info, her free hand rubbing her temple. They wore masks, used a crowbar. Note said, back off, or worse. I think it's tied to a bigger case. The woman hummed, non-committal. We'll send a unit. Stay where you are, give your name. Nia Jackson, she said, sinking onto the bed as the call ended. She waited, the room's silence pressing in, broken only by the distant wail of sirens outside. She'd turned Jamal's betrayal into fuel, contacting her DOT supervisor via encrypted email from her phone, warning them of a leak without naming him yet. Her cloud backups were safe, a lifeline Victor couldn't touch, and now the police would document his latest strike. She'd rebuild her case, brick by brick, starting with this report. 40 minutes later, a knock rattled the door, sharp and insistent. She peered through the peephole. 2 cops, a wiry black man with a shaved head and a stocky white guy with a buzz cut, both in crisp uniforms. She opened the door, relief flickering in her chest. Nia Jackson? I called about a burglary, she said, stepping aside. The wiry cop nodded, his badge reading Officer Tate. Yeah, we got it. This the place it happened? She shook her head. No. Sunrise Motel. I moved here after. Can we talk? Tate glanced at his partner, Officer Ruiz, who shrugged, his hand resting on his belt. Sure, let's hear it, Ruiz said, his voice gruff but open. Nia launched in, recounting the raid, the crash, the masked men, the stolen laptop, the note. She handed over her ID, her real one, and watched Tate scribble in a notepad, his pen moving fast. Sounds targeted, he said, looking up. You got enemies? She hesitated, then nodded. I'm a federal auditor, Department of Transportation, investigating United Airlines. This feels like retaliation. Ruiz raised an eyebrow, but Tate kept writing, his face neutral. We'll check the motel, pull security footage if they've got it. You're safe here? For now, she said, her shoulders easing. They seemed legit, taking her seriously, a stark contrast to the airport guards. Tate handed her a card. Call if anything else pops up. We'll follow up. They left, the door clicking shut, and Nia exhaled, a sliver of control creeping back. She'd turned Victor's attack into a police case, a thread to tug until his web unraveled. She plugged in her phone, opened her cloud files on a borrowed motel tablet, and started rebuilding. Flight logs, witness names, Todd's gate stunt, all typed out fresh. Hours passed, the night deepening outside, her focus sharpening with every word. She'd regained a foothold, a way to fight back. At 2 a.m., a new knock shattered her focus, heavier, more urgent. She stood wary and checked the peephole. A lone cop, mid-40s, with a thick neck and a badge that read, Detective Walsh. No Tate, no Ruiz. Her gut twisted, but she cracked the door. Yes? Walsh's eyes were hard, his mouth a thin line. Nia Jackson, you're under arrest. Hands where I can see them. Her heart stopped, her hands rising slowly. Arrest? For what? He stepped in, cuffs glinting in his grip. Illegal possession of classified data. That laptop you reported stolen. It's got United Airlines secrets you shouldn't have. Turn around. She froze, her mind racing. That's a lie. It's my work, and it was stolen tonight. Walsh smirked, snapping the cuffs on, tighter than the airport pair, the metal cold against her skin. Tell it to the judge. We found it in a dumpster, flagged by a tip. Your prints are all over it. He yanked her toward the door, her carry-on left behind, the tablet blinking on the bed. Nia's legs moved on autopilot, her voice steady despite the panic clawing her chest. This is a setup. I'm a federal auditor. Check my credentials. Walsh laughed, a dry, hollow sound. Yeah, right. You feds always think you're untouchable. He shoved her into the hall, the carpet rough under her socks, and marched her to an unmarked sedan. The night air humid and suffocating. The precinct was a squat brick building, its lights harsh, the air stale with coffee and sweat. Walsh dumped her in a holding cell, a 6x8 cage with a bench and a flickering bulb. "Sit tight," he growled, slamming the bars shut. Naya sank onto the bench, her cuffed hands in her lap, her mind spinning. Victor had done this, planted classified files on her laptop after stealing it, then tipped the cops. The dumpster story was flimsy, but her prints gave it teeth. She'd walked into his trap again, thinking the police were her lifeline. As Walsh disappeared, she overheard two guards by the desk, their voices low but clear. "Heard she's some hotshot fed," one said, chuckling. "Gonna teach her a lesson," the other replied, cracking his knuckles. Her stomach churned, the cell's chill seeping into her bones. She'd reported the break-in, rebuilt her case, thought she'd turned the tables, but Victor had flipped it into a felony charge, a lie so bold it could bury her career. She'd told Tate and Ruiz she was an auditor, but Walsh didn't care. Or worse, he was bought. Victor's reach stretched further than she'd feared, into the police, twisting her proactive move into a noose. The guards' laughter echoed, a promise of rougher treatment to come. She'd seen Jamal's betrayal, survived the viral hit, but this was deeper, a legal quagmire she couldn't talk her way out of. Her backups were safe, but useless if she was locked up, branded a criminal. She leaned against the wall, the concrete cold through her shirt, her breath shallow. Victor had her laptop, her location, now her freedom, each strike more vicious than the last. She'd underestimated his cunning, his ability to corrupt anyone in his path. Walsh returned, his smirk wider, dangling a key ring. "Your lawyers, on the way, courtesy of your Fed buddies. But don't get comfy. This sticks, you're done." He walked off, leaving her with the guards' stares, their grins predatory. Nia closed her eyes, forcing calm, her mind shifting to survival. She'd won a fleeting victory with Tate's report, but Victor had countered with a sledgehammer, framing her as a thief of secrets she'd never touched. As the cell door rattled with an approaching figure, she braced herself, her fight far from over, the stakes higher than ever. Nia Jackson sat in the dim holding cell of the Miami precinct, her wrists still tender from Detective Walsh's cuffs, the concrete bench cold against her back. The guards' taunts had faded into a low hum of radio chatter, their lesson delayed by the arrival of her DOT lawyer, a wiry woman named Elise Tran, who'd stormed in at dawn with a stack of paperwork and a voice like a whip. Elise had argued a technicality, a missing timestamp on Walsh's report, and sprung Nia on bail within hours. No charges filed yet, just a stern warning to stay in town. Nia walked out of the precinct at 7 a.m., the Miami sun already, searing the asphalt, her carry-on slung over her shoulder, her phone clutched tight. She dodged Victor Grayson's legal frame-up, the planted classified data charge hanging like a guillotine, but she was free, her backups intact, her fight alive. She'd won this round, or so she thought. She stepped onto the sidewalk, the air thick with exhaust and salt from the nearby coast, her eyes scanning for a cab. The precinct loomed behind her, a squat brick fortress, its windows glinting like eyes. She'd reported the motel break-in, faced Walsh's lies, and now she'd regroup, call Elise to strategize, hit Victor where it hurt. Her phone buzzed. A text from Elise. "Meet me at the DOT field office 9 a.m. We've got leverage." Nia exhaled, a flicker of hope sparking in her chest. She raised her hand to flag a yellow taxi idling across the street when a roar erupted behind her, a wave of voices crashing over the quiet morning. She turned, and her blood froze. A mob, 30 strong, surged from an alley beside the precinct, their faces twisted with rage, fists clutching bottles and pipes. "There she is!" a man bellowed, his red cap pulled low, a beer bottle raised, like a torch. "The fraud chick!" the crowd roared, closing in, their shouts a jumbled mess of slurs and threats. "Thief! Liar! Get her!" Nia's heart slammed against her ribs, her feet rooted for a split second before instinct kicked in. She bolted, her carry-on banging against her hip, the mob's footsteps pounding behind her. Glass shattered on the pavement, a bottle missing. Her by inches, the stench of cheap liquor stinging her nose. She darted across the street, horns blaring as cars swerved and ducked into an alley, its walls slick with grime, her breath ragged. The mob followed, their voices echoing off the brick, a pack of wolves on her scent. She sprinted, her socks slipping in her sneakers, her mind racing. This wasn't random. Victor had stoked this fire, his viral video the match, this crowd the flame. She'd walked free from the cell, thought she'd outmaneuvered him, but he'd turned the public into his weapon. A woman in a ripped tank top lunged from the side, her nails clawing at Nia's arm, screaming, "You don't belong here." Nia twisted free, shoving her back, and kept running, the alley narrowing into a choke point. She spotted a dumpster, its lid propped open, and veered right, emerging onto a side street thick with morning traffic. The mob spilled out behind her, slower now, some tripping over trash bags but relentless, their hate a living thing. Nia ducked behind a parked van, her chest heaving, her eyes darting for an escape. The crowd fanned out, searching, their shouts growing frantic. She'd lost them for a moment, her freedom from the precinct a fleeting shield now shattered by this chaos. She crept along the van, peering around its edge, when a shadow loomed ahead. A lone figure, tall and wiry, stepping from a doorway. He wore a black hoodie, no mask, his face scarred and hard, a switchblade glinting in his hand. "End of the line," he rasped, his voice low, his stance predatory. Nia's pulse spiked, her hand slipping into her pocket, fingers closing around. A taser she'd stashed after Dallas, a backup she'd kept secret. "Who sent you?" she snapped, stepping back, her grip tightening on the weapon. He grinned, teeth yellowed, and lunged, the blade slashing toward her throat. She dodged, yanking, the taser free, and fired, the prongs sinking into his chest. He convulsed, dropping the knife with a clatter, his body crumpling to the asphalt. Nia kicked the blade away, her breath hitching, triumph surging through her. She'd taken him down, turned his attack into her win, the mob still blocks away, their shouts fading. She'd survived Victor's latest hit, her taser a lifeline in this urban jungle. But the victory evaporated as sirens wailed, red and blue lights flashing from the street's end. Two cops leapt from a cruiser, guns drawn, their voices sharp. "Drop it! Hands up!" Nia froze, the taser still in her hand, the thug groaning, at her feet. "He attacked me," she said, raising her arms, the weapon clattering down. The cops didn't flinch, one cuffing her while the other checked the thug, who muttered, "She jumped me, crazy lady." Nia's jaw dropped, her mind reeling. "That's a lie. He had a knife." The cop cuffing her, a beefy guy with a crew cut, smirked. "Yeah? Looks like assault to me. You're coming in." They hauled her up, the thug staggering to his feet, clutching his chest but grinning through the pain. The precinct swallowed her again, a different cell this time, its bars rusted, the air sour with mildew. The cops booked her for assault, ignoring her pleas, the thug's knife mysteriously gone from the scene. She sat, cuffed to the bench, her carry-on confiscated, her phone dead in evidence. Victor had done this, tipped them off, turned her self-defense into a crime. She'd escaped the mob, floored the attacker, thought she'd clawed back control, but he'd flipped it again, his reach slithering into the streets, the police, every corner she turned. The guards from last night watched her now, their grins wider, one whispering, "Told you we'd teach her." "Hey, what's your call on this madness?" Comment number 1 if you think Nia's getting screwed by a rigged system, or a 2 if you reckon she should have run instead of fought. Ever had the truth twisted against you like that? Hit that like button if you're boiling over Victor's dirty tricks, and subscribe to see Nia battle this insanity. Her head throbbed, the cell's chill sinking into her bones. She'd walked, out of one trap into another, her bailout a fleeting gasp before Victor's next punch. The thug was his hired muscle, the mob his distraction, the cops his pawns. She'd tased her way out, felt the rush of victory, but he'd turned it into cuffs, a charge that could stick. Elise would fight it, but the damage was piling up, each blow heavier than the last. She'd underestimated his cruelty, his ability to wield chaos like a blade. All right, let's dig into this with you. Drop a number 1 in the comments if you're betting Nia's got a trick up her sleeve, or a 3 if you think Victor's got her pinned this time. Ever seen someone bounce back from a setup this brutal? Smash that like if you're hooked on her grit, and subscribe for the next wild turn. The cell door clanged, a new cop approaching, his face blank. "Lawyer's here again," he said, unlocking her cuffs. Nia stood, her legs stiff, her resolve flickering but unbroken. She'd survived the mob, the knife, but Victor's counterstrike had landed, twisting her win into a loss. As she followed the cop out, her mind churned. He'd played her, but she'd play harder. The fight was far from over and the stakes were climbing into uncharted territory. So here's the kicker for you. What's Victor's next move now that Nia's back in the fire? Is he just toying with her, or does he have a bigger endgame brewing? Hang tight, because the next hit's gonna shake this whole story to its core. Nia Jackson walked out of the Miami precinct for the second time in 24 hours, her wrists bruised from yet another set of cuffs. Her carry-on returned with a rip in the side from rough handling. Elise Tran, her DOT lawyer, had pulled her out again, dismantling the assault charge with a witness from the alley, a bodega owner who'd seen the thug's knife and called it in. The cops had grumbled, the thug vanished into the system, and Nia was free on a technicality. The taser incident chalked up to self-defense. The morning sun blazed over the city, the air sticky with humidity, palm trees swaying in a lazy breeze. She'd survived the mob, floored Victor Grayson's hired blade, and dodged another cell, her resolve a steel thread holding her together. She'd won this round, a gritty, hard-fought escape, and now she'd take the fight to United Airlines itself. Elise drove her to a diner 3 blocks away, a retro spot with red vinyl booths and the clatter of plates, where they could talk without precinct ears. Nia slid into a seat, her bandaged foot throbbing, her phone charging from a portable pack Elise had brought. "We've got enough to hit them hard," Elise said, sipping black coffee, her sharp eyes locked on Nia. The gate denial, the flight harassment, the fake ID, the break-in, the mob setup. "I've scheduled a meeting with United's regional VP at noon. You ready?" Nia nodded, her jaw tight. "More than ready. Victor's behind it all, and I've got proof." She pulled a hidden audio recorder from her sock, a tiny device she'd switched on during the alley fight, its red light blinking faintly. "Caught the thug saying Grayson sends his regards before I tased him." Elise grinned, a rare crack in her cool facade. "That's gold. We'll bury them with it." Nia ordered a water, her throat parched, and leaned back, the vinyl creaking under her weight. She'd rebuilt her case from backups, turned the police report into leverage, and now she'd confront United head-on. Victor had pushed her to the brink, but she'd flipped his chaos into a weapon. The diner's jukebox hummed an old Motown tune, a fleeting comfort as she braced for the showdown. 2 hours later, they pulled up to United's regional office, a sleek glass building off Biscayne Boulevard, its lobby all marble and chrome, a testament to corporate power. The VP, a man named Harold Vance, waited in a conference room on the 10th floor, his pinstripe suit crisp, his bald head gleaming under recessed lights. He rose as they entered, his handshake firm but his smile strained, flanked by a junior exec who clutched a tablet like a shield. "Ms. Jackson, Ms. Tran, welcome," Vance said, gesturing to leather chairs. "I understand there's been an issue with one of our flights." Nia sat, her posture rigid, Elise beside her with a folder thick with notes. "More than an issue," Nia said, her voice steady. "Your staff denied me a confirmed seat, harassed me mid-flight, framed me with a fake ID, trashed my hotel room, and sent a mob after me. All orchestrated by Victor Grayson, your senior gate manager." Vance's smile faltered, his fingers drumming the table. "Those are serious claims. Evidence?" Elise slid the folder across, pages spilling out. Flight records, police reports, screenshots of the viral video, and a USB with the thug's recorded confession. Nia tapped the recorder, hitting play. The thug's raspy voice filled the room. "Grayson sends his regards." Vance's face paled, the junior exec shifting uncomfortably. "This is troubling," Vance muttered, flipping through the papers. "Victor's been with us 15 years. You're saying he's behind all this?" Nia leaned forward, her eyes locked on his. "He knew I'm a federal auditor, targeted me to kill the investigation. You've got a racist running your Miami hub, and he's dragging United down with him." Vance rubbed his temples, the room silent, but for the hum of the AC. If this is true, it's a liability we can't ignore. But drop the audit, Ms. Jackson, and we'll clear your record, compensate you, make this go away. Nia's fists clenched under the table, her voice cutting through his offer. No deal. I'm here to expose corruption, not bury it. Fire Grayson, or this hits the DOT Enforcement Division. Elise nodded, adding, We've got enough for fines, lawsuits, maybe criminal charges, your call. Vance sighed, his shoulders slumping. All right, Grayson's out, effective immediately. We'll cooperate. But keep this quiet, please. Nia exhaled, a rush of triumph flooding her chest. She'd faced Victor's gauntlet, turned his own words against him, and forced United's hand. Vance called security, barking orders to escort Victor from the building, his career torched in minutes. Nia stood shaking Elise's hand, the weight of days lifting slightly. She'd won, a clean strike at the heart of Victor's power, her mission intact. They left the office, the lobby's cool air a victory lap, Elise promising to file the DOT report by nightfall. Nia stepped outside, the sun high, her bandaged foot a dull ache, thinking she'd finally turned the tide. But as she reached the sidewalk, her phone buzzed. A new email popping up, sender anonymous. She opened it, and her stomach dropped. Attached were her audit files, stolen from her laptop, twisted into a tabloid expose. Federal auditor caught in airline scam, complete with doctored emails suggesting she'd fabricated data for profit. The message read, You'll regret this, signed with a single initial, V. Her breath hitched, her victory dissolving into dread. Victor, fired but not finished, had emailed the files to a sleazy outlet, the Miami Pulse, time-stamped 10 minutes ago. She refreshed X. The story was live, retweets spiking, comments calling her a crook in a suit. Corrupt Fed. She stumbled to a bench, her carry-on thudding beside her, the city's roar fading to a dull pulse. Victor's firing had felt like justice, a knockout blow, but he'd countered with a gut punch, leaking her work to smear her name again. The files were real, but the spin was a lie, painting her as the villain she'd fought to expose. Her triumph in that conference room crumbled, the corporate win a hollow shell as Victor's blackmail reignited the hate she'd just escaped. She'd thought she'd cut his strings, but he'd pulled a new one, his reach unbroken, his venom seeping into her career, her life. Elise joined her, peering at the phone, her face hardening. He's desperate, striking from the shadows. We'll sue, counter this. Nia nodded, her jaw tight, but the damage was spreading, each retweet a fresh scar. She'd faced the mob, the knife, the cell, and won, only for Victor to flip it into a scandal that could end her. The sun beat down, the bench hot against her thighs, her mind racing. She'd taken his job, but he'd taken her credibility, a trade she hadn't seen coming. As cars honked around her, she clenched her fists, her resolve flickering but alive. Victor thought he'd broken her, but she'd rise again even if the cost kept climbing. Nia Jackson sat on the edge of a sagging couch in a safe house on Miami's north side. A cramped apartment the DOT had secured after Victor Grayson's tabloid leak turned her into a pariah. The walls were a peeling beige, the air stale with dust and the faint tang of mold, a single bulb flickering overhead. Her carry-on rested by the door, its ripped side a badge of every battle she'd fought since Dallas. The Miami Pulse story, federal auditor caught in airline scam, had exploded online. Her audit files twisted into lies that painted her as a corrupt Fed, retweets hitting 6 figures, comments a cesspool of venom. She'd fired Victor from United, thought she'd landed a killing blow, but his blackmail had flipped it, torching her credibility. Now, holed up here, she'd rebuild, strike back, protect what was left. Elise Tran had left an hour ago, promising to sue the Pulse, to counter Victor's smear with legal fire. While Nia worked her phone, its screen cracked but glowing with cloud backups. She typed furiously, rebuilding her case. Todd's gate denial, Marla's flight stunt, the fake ID, the motel raid, the mob, the frame-up, all cross-referenced with audio of the thugs. Grayson sends his regards. The DOT had her back, a team in DC analyzing the leak, tracing its source. She'd gone dark, no hotel clerks or cabs to betray her. This safe house a fortress until she could regroup. Her bandaged foot throbbed, her wrists ached, but her mind was a blade, cutting through the chaos. She'd survived Victor's worst, and now she'd bury him. The phone rang, shattering the silence, her sister Keisha's name flashing on the screen. Nia's chest tightened. Keisha lived in Atlanta, safe from this mess, or so she'd thought. She answered, her voice steady. "Hey Kay, you good?" Keisha's reply came in sobs, her words tumbling out like broken glass. "Nia, they burned my house. It's gone, everything's gone. There's a note says Nia's next. What's happening?" Nia's blood ran cold, her grip on the phone whitening her knuckles. "Who did this? When?" Keisha hiccuped, her voice raw. "Tonight, an hour ago. Fire trucks just left. I was out, thank God, but the note was on my car." "Nia, I'm scared." Nia stood, the room spinning, her breath shallow. "Stay where you are, Kay. I'm coming. Where are you now?" Keisha stammered. "A friend's place near Decatur. Please, hurry." Nia hung up, her mind racing, the safe house's walls closing in. Victor had struck again, not at her, but at Keisha, her only family, a single mom with a 2-year-old Nia adored. He'd torched her sister's home, left a threat aimed at Nia's heart, his vengeance spiraling beyond Miami. She grabbed her carry-on, shoving her phone inside, and called Elise, her voice a whip. "Victor hit my sister's house in Atlanta. Burned it down. I need a flight now." Elise cursed, her calm cracking. "I'll get you on the next one. Stay sharp, Nia." 2 hours later, Nia boarded a red-eye from Miami to Atlanta, a Delta flight she'd taken under an alias, her blazer swapped for a hoodie, her face shadowed by a baseball cap. The DOT had pulled strings, Elise working overtime, and Nia sat. In economy, row 15, the cabin dim, passengers dozing around her. She'd thought the safe house was her shield, a chance to rebuild. But Victor had shattered it, tracking Keisha through airline records he still accessed, his loyal cronies a network she couldn't see. The plane hummed, climbing into the night, and Nia's fingers dug into her armrests, guilt gnawing at her. She dragged Keisha into this, her audit a beacon for Victor's wrath, and now her sister was homeless, terrified, because of her. She landed at Hartsfield-Jackson at 3 a.m., the terminal a ghost town. Escalators still, the air cool and quiet. She rented a car, a beat-up sedan with a dented hood, and drove to Decatur. The streets dark, the city asleep. Keisha waited at her friend's duplex, a squat brick building with a porch light buzzing moths. Nia pulled up and Keisha ran out, her braids loose, her eyes red, throwing her arms around Nia in a desperate hug. "You're here," she whispered, trembling. Nia held her tight, her voice soft. "I'm so sorry, Kay. Where's the baby?" Keisha nodded inside. "With Tanya, asleep. Safe, for now." They stepped in, the living room cramped with a pull-out couch and a TV flickering static. Tanya, a stocky woman in a nightgown, nodding grimly from the kitchen. Nia sat Keisha down, her sister clutching the note, its edges singed. "Nia's next." She studied it, the block letters a mirror of the motel threat, Victor's signature in every stroke. "He's unhinged," Nia said, her voice low. "Fired. From United. But he's still got pull. Still coming for me." Keisha wiped her eyes, her hands shaking. "Why us? What did you do?" Nia swallowed, guilt bitter on her tongue. "I'm auditing United, exposing racism. He's the ringleader, and he's hitting me through you." Keisha's face crumpled, but she nodded, resolve hardening beneath her fear. "Then stop him, Nia. For us." Nia stood, pacing the tiny room, her mind a storm. She'd vowed revenge, planned to rebuild from Miami, but Victor had escalated, torching Keisha's life to break her. She called Elise again, whispering to avoid waking the baby. "He burned Keisha's house. I'm in Atlanta. What's next?" Elise's voice was steel. "DOT's tracing his access, but he's off the grid. Stay with your sister. I'll send backup." Nia hung up, her eyes on Keisha, who'd curled into a ball on the couch, exhaustion overtaking her. She'd regrouped, thought she'd held the line, but Victor's strike had ripped through her family, a wound deeper than any cell or smear. Then Tanya burst in from the kitchen, her voice a hiss. Someone's outside, Nia. Black truck just parked. Nia's pulse spiked, and she peered through the blinds, spotting a hulking SUV idling across the street, its windows tinted, exhaust curling into the night. Her phone buzzed, a blocked number, and she answered, her breath held. "Yeah." Man's voice, not Victor's, rasped through. "Keisha's gone. Hand her over or we burn this place too." Nia's blood ran hot, her eyes darting to her sister still on the couch. "She's right here," she snapped, but the line went dead, and the truck's engine roared, tires screeching as it sped off. She turned, and her heart stopped. The couch was empty. Keisha's blanket crumpled on the floor. "Kay!" she shouted, lunging for the back door, Tanya behind her, gasping. It swung open to a tiny yard, the gate ajar, and Nia ran out, her bandaged foot screaming, the darkness swallowing any sign of her sister. Tanya clutched her arm, sobbing. "They took her, Nia, while we were up front." Nia's knees buckled, her vision blurring, guilt and rage crashing over her. Victor's men had snatched Keisha, a silent grab in minutes, her safe retreat a delusion. She'd come to protect her sister, thought she'd bought time, but he'd struck again. His cruelty, a tidal wave she couldn't outrun. She stumbled back inside, Tanya calling 911, her voice a wail. Nia grabbed her phone, dialing Elise, her words a snarl. "They've got Keisha. Black truck, Atlanta. Find them." Elise cursed, promising DOT muscle, but Nia barely heard. Her mind locked on Victor's grin, his icy eyes, his relentless hate. She'd regrouped, clung to her backups, but he'd taken her sister, the one piece she couldn't lose. The room spun, the baby's cry piercing the chaos, and Nia sank to the floor, her fists pounding the carpet. She'd fight. She'd kill, if she had to, but Victor had raised the stakes to a personal hell, and she was running out of moves. Nia Jackson stood in the pre-dawn gloom of Tanya's duplex in Atlanta, the air thick with the scent of charred wood from Keisha's torched home miles away. Her sister was gone, snatched by Victor Grayson's men in a silent, brutal grab, the black truck's taillights a fading ghost in her memory. The baby's cries echoed from the back room, Tanya's frantic 911 call a lifeline Nia barely registered. Her phone buzzed, Elise Tran's voice cutting through the haze. "We've got a lead, Nia." DOT tracked a burner phone tied to Victor's old United contacts, warehouse off I-95 Miami. "They're moving Keisha there. Cops are rolling. Meet them in Miami." Nia's jaw tightened, her bandaged foot a dull ache, her resolve a blazing furnace. "I'm on it," she said, hanging up, her eyes locked on the empty couch where Keisha had been. She grabbed her carry-on, shoving Tanya's spare car keys into her pocket, the sedan outside her only shot. "Stay with the baby," she told Tanya, her voice a whip. "Police are coming. Tell them everything." Tanya nodded, tears streaming, and Nia bolted out, the night swallowing her as she floored the gas toward Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. She caught a 5 a.m. flight back to Miami, a packed Delta red-eye, her hoodie pulled low, her alias holding under the clerk's tired scrutiny. The plane's hum was a drumbeat to her racing thoughts, Keisha's sobs replaying, Victor's note, Nia's next, a promise he'd half fulfilled. She'd lost her sister, her safe house, her edge, but she'd find her, end this, no matter the cost. She landed at 6:30, the Miami sky a bruised gray, the terminal buzzing with early travelers. Elise met her at arrivals, her wiry frame taut, a black SUV idling behind her with 2 DOT agents, ex-military types with grim faces and earpieces. "Cops are staging near the warehouse," Elise said, handing Nia a vest and a spare phone. "Victor's there. We've got eyes on the truck. You're with us." Nia strapped on the vest, its weight grounding her, and slid into the SUV, the agents peeling out toward I-95. The city blurred past, warehouses and shipping yards sprawling. Under the dawn, her mind locked on Keisha, on Victor's icy grin, on the reckoning ahead. They reached the target at 7, a rusted hulk of a building off the highway, its windows boarded. The black truck parked by a loading dock. Miami PD swarmed in, 6 cruisers fanning out, officers in tactical gear barking orders. Nia crouched. Behind the SUV, Elise beside her, the hidden recorder from the thug fight clutched in her hand, its battery low but alive. "He's inside," an agent whispered, nodding at a side door. 3 hostiles armed. Keisha's with them. Nia's chest tightened, her breath shallow, but she moved, shadowing the cops as they breached, the door splintering under a battering ram, shouts erupting within. The warehouse was a cavern of shadows, crates stacked high, the air sour with oil and rot. Nia slipped in, her sneakers silent on the concrete, the recorder rolling as she trailed the cops. Flashlights cut through the dark, and she spotted Victor, his charcoal suit crisp despite the grime, standing by a metal chair where Keisha sat. Wrists bound, her face bruised but defiant. 3 thugs flanked him, pistols glinting, their eyes darting as the police closed in. "Drop it," a cop bellowed, but Victor laughed, his voice smooth and venomous. "You're too late, Auditor. She's leverage, and you're finished." Nia's blood boiled, her sister's fear a dagger in her gut, but she stayed low, circling behind a crate, her recorder catching every word. "You're done, Grayson," she shouted, stepping into view, her vest stark against the gloom. "United, fired you. The DOT's got your network and this tape's your coffin." She held up the device, its red light a beacon, Victor's eyes narrowing. "Racism, corruption, kidnapping, it's all here." He sneered, his hand twitching toward a gun on his hip. "You think you've won? I'll bury you both." The cop surged, but Nia moved faster, lunging at a thug as he aimed at Keisha, tackling him to the ground, his pistol skidding across the floor. She punched his jaw, bone crunching, and rolled free, grabbing the gun as the second thug fired, the shot grazing her vest, a hot sting against her ribs. Chaos erupted, cops shouting, bullets pinging off metal, the third thug dropping under a tackle. Nia fired twice, clipping Victor's leg, his scream echoing as he fell, the gun slipping from his grasp. She scrambled to Keisha, cutting her ropes, with a shard of crate, her sister's arms wrapping around her, trembling but alive. "You're okay," Nia whispered, hauling her up, the recorder still rolling in her pocket. Victor's confession. "I'll bury you both." A golden ticket. The cops swarmed in, cuffing the thugs, pinning Victor as he writhed, blood pooling under his knee, his icy eyes locked on Nia, burning with hate. She stood, Keisha clinging to her, the warehouse a battlefield of flashing lights and shouts. Victor was down, his empire crumbling, her sister safe in her arms. She'd outsmarted him, turned his trap into her triumph, the tape a sledgehammer to his lies. "You're finished," she said, her voice steel, as the cops dragged him up, his suit torn, his grin replaced by a snarl. They hustled him out, Keisha sobbing into Nia's shoulder, the agent securing the scene, Elise rushing in with a nod of grim approval. Nia exhaled, her body shaking, triumph surging through her. She'd won, rescued Keisha, ended Victor's reign, the nightmare finally breaking. But as they stepped outside, a crack split the air, a sniper's bullet slicing past her ear, grazing, her arm with a fiery sting. She dropped, pulling Keisha down, the cops shouting, "Shoot her!" Chaos reignited, officers diving for cover, the shot echoing off the warehouse walls. Nia's arm bled, a shallow gash, her vest useless against the high perch. She scanned the rooftops, spotting a figure in black retreating too far to chase. Victor, cuffed and limping toward a cruiser, laughed, a low, chilling sound. "You didn't think I'd go alone, did you?" he rasped, his eyes glinting with malice, blood dripping from his leg. The cops swarmed the area, radios crackling, but the sniper was gone, a ghost in the dawn. Nia clutched Keisha, her triumph souring, her breath ragged. She'd saved her sister, recorded Victor's downfall, but the tape vanished in the melee, snatched from her pocket by a rogue hand as the cops focused on the shot. She checked, her fingers fumbling, the recorder gone. Victor's ally striking one last blow. The police hauled him away, his laughter fading, but the sniper and the lost evidence hung over her, a bitter twist to her victory. Keisha trembled beside her, safe but fragile, the warehouse a tomb of her fleeting win. Elise knelt beside her, her face grim. "We've got him, Nia. But that shot, the tape, someone's still out there." Nia nodded, her arm throbbing, her mind spinning. She'd faced Victor head-on, freed Keisha, thought she'd ended it, but his network lingered, a hydra with heads she couldn't see. The cops secured the scene, medics rushing in. But Nia sat frozen. The bullets graze a warning. The missing. Tape a wound deeper than flesh. She'd won the battle, her sister alive. Victor in cuffs. But his final strike had landed, a shadow stretching beyond this dawn. Her fight far from over. Back in that trashed Miami hotel room, Nia Jackson stared at the note pinned to the wall. "You'll pay for this, Auditor." Her shredded first-class pass a confetti of failure on the floor. The sniper who grazed her arm was Victor Grayson's boss, a United exec who'd framed her as a whistleblower to kill her audit. His shadow looming larger than Victor's cuffs could contain. Keisha was safe, the tape gone, but Nia leaked her story to X, sparking a federal probe that fined United $10 million, a hollow win. As she boarded a flight home, a text buzzed. "We're watching." Victor was a pawn, the real mastermind still free, and Nia's fight had just begun. Nia Jackson's journey in this gripping tale reveals profound truths about resilience, systemic injustice, and the cost of fighting for what's right. First, it underscores that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the will to push through it. Nia faced relentless racial profiling, from Todd's gate snub to Victor Grayson's violent vendetta, yet she never stopped, turning each blow into fuel for her mission. Her story teaches us that standing up to racism often means enduring personal sacrifice, as seen when Victor torched Keisha's home and kidnapped her. A brutal reminder that oppressors target what we love most to break us. Second, it exposes how deeply prejudice can embed itself in systems, with Victor's network, stretching from airline staff to police, showing that individual battles are part of a larger war against institutional bias. Nia's partial victory, fining United $10 million, proves change is possible, but the missing tape and lurking exec reveal it's rarely complete. Finally, her tale hammers home the power of truth. Leaking her story to X shifted the narrative, even if it couldn't erase the scars. We learn that justice is a marathon, not a sprint, demanding grit, strategy, and community. So, what's your takeaway? Have you ever fought a battle where the odds kept stacking higher, like Nia did? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Number 1 if you faced a victor of your own, or 2 if you think Nia's just getting started. Hit that like button if her fight inspires you, subscribe for more tales of defiance, and share this with anyone who needs a spark to keep going. Thanks for joining us on this wild ride. Your support fuels these stories. Here's to strength in the face of storms, and may you always find the fire to rise, no matter the odds.